progress at this point in time moving forward. So, characteristics. First, we must respond to a quickening pace of need. As General Kaler and General James and General Lord said in one way or another already today, we have to develop things at the speed of need. That does not mean at the speed with which we acquisition guys think's right, but it's the speed that the warfighter needs our developments. The world's changing faster every minute of the time. The solutions we can provide from space to complex problems continue to increase. We're getting better. Potential adversary capabilities to defeat our space capabilities continue to mature and grow as well. We have to be prepared to respond to that. The second characteristic I'd suggest is technological solutions and their maturity need to be demonstrated ahead of space program initiation. In the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and even into the 1980s, technology was our limiter. In the first half of the space era, we developed the technology and the programs simultaneously. They were fully intertwined with each other. Today, we cannot afford to do this any longer. We need to push on the future technologies that we require and get them mature before we start the development phase of a program. This is good acquisition discipline, but it costs money up front in a program. We must fund this approach, and we have to make that investment. We can't slack on it. The Transformational Satellite Communication System, TSAT, as we all know it, I think is an excellent example of this being done properly. All critical technologies are ready now to build TSAT. The third characteristic I'd suggest is we need for future acquisitions is an ability to define and to stick to good enough. Good enough means the new capability will provide a substantial user benefit. It also means it's buildable, using mature and available technology in a reasonable time. Lastly, it means it needs to fit within the budget that's projected to be available. And oh, by the way, during program formulation, that amount of budget will vary depending on the surrounding environments or many other factors. So trades have to occur at this point in the program. This requires something I'd call formulation agility. And this is something that is extremely hard. I can tell you from my experiences in space radar, it's really hard. So something to keep in mind. The fourth characteristic, following well-crafted spiral or block build strategies which cut down the design to delivery timelines. Sounds simple? It's not simple. I call this approach bite off what you can chew. This requires user appetite suppression to realize that fully envisioned capability may take longer, but worthwhile interim deliveries will be available more quickly. Delivering those defined program blocks, the requirements for each block, and the planned schedules needs to be a unified effort between the acquirers, that's us, the requirements developers, and the end users. Got to work together on this. The compromises must be accepted to achieve useful capability and buildable and deliverable products. This is also a really hard step, but again, necessary if we're going to move acquisition forward and meet the needs of the future. I believe GPS 3 Alpha is a good example of this strategy at work right now. We've done these things on GPS 3 and we're moving ahead. Fifth, developing assured delivery schedules and quality products. This directly relates to understanding what you plan to build and developing a solid program baseline from the start, as well as defined, properly resourced work packages, something we're all familiar with and we realize are hard to do. Add to that a very reasonable management reserve, entrusted to the program director for his or her use to solve problems and unknowns. A major piece that we've got to get right. Because no matter how good we get at what we do, and I think we're getting better, problems in development are going to occur. We need to plan for them. You know, the stuff we're doing is rocket science, and we're working hard to make sure we get it right. But those things have to occur. So, thinking this through, I see several challenges in achieving these needed acquisition characteristics for the future, and we have to work through these challenges, but we've got to do it together. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take extraordinary coordination. It requires communication and trust across organizations, both government and contractor. I think a fine example of this at work is the wideband global system. This Friday night, as we just discussed, at about 21:30 Eastern Daylight Time, we plan to launch WGS-2 on an Atlas V from Cape Canaveral. Each WGS spacecraft provides the same communications bandwidth capability as the entire Discus constellation. The launch and operational handover of WGS-2 will complete IOC for this really powerful constellation. Go WGS, go Atlas. Can't wait for Friday night. We're just about ready to go. Exciting. The mindset needs to be different. It's different than most of us have grown up with in space. Our air, land, and sea brethren know much more about this operating through concept, operating through a contested environment than we do. Now, I think this heightens the need for space situational awareness, protection of space assets, and a defensive counter-space capability that's second to none. So getting SSA right means being able to fuse many dissimilar sets of data from several different sources and doing it quickly and accurately, and presenting decision quality information to decision makers like Larry James, as he talked about at lunch. Getting space protection right means understanding the environment around the system or systems completely, while being able to react successfully to new intelligence and rapid change. Successful DCS, defensive counterspace, means having the instantaneous knowledge to decide what defensive measures or maneuvers to take, having the ability to take those required actions, and then understanding the effects of what it was we did. Space of the future really becomes a three-dimensional chessboard or three-dimensional chess match of enormous size and proportion. What we acquire in space, on the ground, and for communication links in between, must deliver the attributes which provide us these types of rapid insight and rapid control capabilities. Now you think about that. Space is a three-dimensional chess match. And add to that what Bill Lord talked about here just an hour ago about what he's facing as we move forward in the cyber domain. And think about combining all that together. This is what the future holds for us and the challenge we have to figure out how to step up to. The second challenge is that, as most of us know, we're operating with very little in the barn. The amount of capability we have on the ground today to replace our aging systems in space is pretty slim. We've counted on space systems' operational life and mean mission duration, frankly, to outlast the planned system design lives that we created in the first place. Now, in many cases, lucky for us, this has occurred, and our system will live on and on. But you know, in several mission areas, as we look out there, we do live on borrowed time. This makes the criticality of what we are building at SMC and at the NRO, Army and Navy Space, at NASA, and other agencies so much more important. At SMC, we've been challenged with bringing into operation 5 brand new space systems within the next 24 months. Most of you are pretty familiar with what I'm talking about. The WGS system, which we're about to launch the second spacecraft. The GPS-2F system. The SVSS, the Space-Based Space Surveillance System. AEHF, Advanced EEHF system. And SBIRS GEO, bringing on board the GEO piece to add to the HEO nodes. With WGS, launches are underway. With the others, we're well down the production road to complete the first spacecraft, and that's exciting. Likewise, new programs to follow these, such as GPS-3 and TSAT. Those are equally as critical. Both of these are postured to be developed following these acquisition characteristics I've just outlined. Now, in some cases, the situation requires more rapid response than we're talking about here. We're working very closely with the Operationally Responsive Space Office, trying to help develop the right concepts for responsive space for the future, and to build capabilities such as ORS-1 to respond to those rapidly defined needs. Likewise, some other responsive needs can be solved on the ground by using operational systems in a different manner. Enhanced ground exploitation of SBIRS HEO data, which we're working pretty hard on right now, is just one example of this type of quick responsiveness that we can achieve by not adding something new in space, just changing some capability we already have on the ground. Adding these types of responsive flexibility into the acquisition system, I think, reduces the risk we face of having very little in the barn at this point in time and still needing to be able to move forward. Now, a third challenge is an aging workforce in space development. We face a growing challenge of an aging workforce, for instance, like me. 1/3 of our civilian workforce at SMC can retire by 2010. Further, we have a bathtub shortage of mid-level engineers and acquisition folks because cutbacks